Hello everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Minty Reviewspectives, where I am finally here to talk about the end of David Tennant's era of Doctor Who, and the end of the Russell T Davies' initial era of Doctor Who from New Who Revival. This is the first episode you're watching of this. This is the finale of this part of the Reviewspectives. But basically, Reviewspective, as I'm calling it, is I have watched Doctor Who my entire life, basically, from the New Who onward, and it's just been a while since I've gone back and rewatched any of it, so I've been going back and rewatching it with like fresh eyes, basically, because it's been years since I've seen these episodes, and kind of like reviewing them and giving like a little retrospective. And these ones are on the 4, technically 5, I guess, specials that ended off David Tennant's run as the 10th Doctor and ended Russell T Davies' run as the initial showrunner of Doctor Who. Just like the other ones, I've basically done a whole series. This is just for the specials though, and yeah, it's been a while, but here we are for the end of it. So without any further ado, let's just get into talking about these things and getting into the reviews and the retrospectives of each of these specials. Episode 1, Planet of the Dead. The true beginning of the end for David Tennant's 10th Doctor is finally here. The episode begins with the International Gallery being robbed by the aristocratic thief Lady Christina de Souza, who is played by Michelle Ryan. As Christina begins to escape, she runs aboard a double-decker bus and is soon after joined by the Doctor. While seemingly a coincidence, the Doctor is actually using a sensor to scan for rhodium and happens to scan trace amounts on the bus. As the bus is driving away from the police that are chasing Christina, the bus and all of its passengers drive through a wormhole that drops them on a desert planet seemingly void of all life. The Doctor is able to calm the civilians down by coming clean to them and explaining what he was doing, and begins working to figure out how to get everyone back to Earth. Back on Earth, UNIT has arrived at the scene of the wormhole and has begun doing UNIT things. For the most part, they don't do much in this episode outside of being there. Anyway, the bus group all introduce themselves, and the Doctor calms them all down by telling them to think about where they were all going so they have the same goal to get back home. The bus crew then begin to test out various ways of getting the bus to move so they can get back through the wormhole, which sadly do not work. The Doctor and Christina wander off and have a conversation that basically knights Christina as the temporary companion for this adventure. This whole time, the crew are being watched by a strange insect-like alien as well. Back on Earth, unit scientist Malcolm Taylor is able to make contact with the Doctor and begins working on finding a way to get them back home as well. A massive storm is heading towards the bus at this point, and the Doctor realizes that it is not sand, but metal, and later learns it's actually a swarm of carnivorous, stingray-like aliens that actually ate everything on the planet. Wonderful. The Doctor and Christina are then captured and quickly befriend the pair of insect aliens named the Tritivores. They had been spying on them before. Using a video probe, the Doctor learns about the stingrays and that they are the ones that opened the wormhole because science fiction reasons. Now, with a time limit over their heads, the Doctor, Christina, and the Tritivores devise a plan to escape, but are cut short when one of the stingrays attacks them and eats the Tritivores. Luckily, Christina was able to use her burglary skills to get a crystal power source from the Tritivores' crashed ship to use on the bus. The Doctor and Christina run back to the bus and begin to retrofit it to use the crystal before the stingrays get to them. They are able to do it, thanks to the Doctor smashing the gold cup that Christina stole earlier, and the bus flies to the wormhole and back to Earth. Sadly, this also gives the stingrays just enough time to have a couple fly through with them. UNIT then does their job, fairly poorly, and shoot at the stingrays while Dr. Malcolm closes the wormhole. The civilians are safely home, and Christina is about to get arrested by the police, but is helped by the Doctor once again and escapes with the flying bus. Prior to leaving, Carmen, one of the passengers of the bus that had slight psychic powers, tells the Doctor that his song is ending, which reflects what Ood Sigma had told them before. So the first special was a nice return to form for the 10th Doctor. Given the release schedule of the episodes, Planet of the Dead felt like a good way to ease the audience back into getting familiar with David Tennant, back into getting familiar with the Doctor, the antics of the Doctor as well. I think, if I remember correctly, it was the Easter special as well, given how the specials released. I think it released around Easter. 2009 was a bit of a weird schedule for these specials releasing as well. So I think Easter was around the time it released. It was like the end of April, something like that. But also at the same time, watching it again, I didn't necessarily get any feeling of it being a special. It just felt like a little bit of a longer episode, and even then, the little bit longer episode feel didn't necessarily... It wasn't warranted for the most part. Like, the extra time we got with the episode didn't really amount to much. I still loved the episode, though. Don't get me wrong. I still really loved the episode and loved a lot of things about it. It just didn't give off that feeling of being a special, like the Christmas specials normally do, or honestly, like the finales normally do in this era as well. However, I will also say that Michelle Ryan, as as Lady Christina D'Souza was phenomenal. I really loved her as this role, and I do love the fact that she did come back a few times in some of the audiobooks to reprise this role of Lady Christina D'Souza. I think that was a great idea. I think she was a great casting for it, and I wish they used her again in the actual series at some point, like just brought her back every once in a while. I don't think they ever did, though. Like, they might have at some point, I just forgot. But looking through IMDb, I don't think she ever came back, like, physically in an episode, and I kind of wish that she would at some point. Given Davies is back on Doctor Who now with the 15th Doctor, she might come back at some point. That'd be pretty cool. But either way, I really liked the chemistry between her and David Tennant. I thought they had a really good doctor-companion relationship, and it just felt really cool. The other supporting cast of the episode I thought was fine as well. I didn't necessarily care about anyone from UNIT other than Malcolm Taylor. I thought he was, Dr. Taylor I thought was great. He was fun. I did not write down the actor's name, so I'll just put the actor's name here somewhere. I thought he was pretty fun. I thought he made a really good UNIT member, and I'm pretty sure he also popped up in some of the audiobooks at some point, just because that's what UNIT members usually do. They pop in the audiobooks sometimes. However, the other supporting cast was pretty funny, especially since one of them was Daniel Kaluuya, who has gone on to become a very famous actor. And this is just one of those Doctor Who funny things where it's like, oh yeah, is this a random side actor? Oh wait, they're like an Oscar winner now. Okay, that's fun. It's just one of those like funny like British TV things like, huh, this was a show they were in. Okay. So just having Daniel Kaluuya in this episode was just really funny. But beyond that, like, nothing in the episode really felt special for the most part. It did feel like it had a little more of a budget, and it was the first instance of them actually using high-definition cameras for the show, and you can definitely tell. Like, going back and rewatching it, it's a little more difficult to tell they were using high-definition cameras since all of the previous episodes had been up-converted to HD anyway, so it's a little bit different. Like, you can tell kind of that the cameras were different and that they were actually using high-definition now, but it was still one of those things where, like, okay, going back and rewatching it, it's a little bit of a more difficult thing, but watching it during the actual airing of it, you definitely could tell for sure. But beyond all that, the episode was good. I thought it was a good episode, just didn't feel like a special, but it did feel like a good way to ease back into this world of Doctor Who and into these coming specials as well, nearing the end of David Tennant's run, especially since he really did feel like the Doctor in this episode, and I really liked how he played the Doctor in this episode. So overall, I give it a 4 out of 5, which is a really solid story with some great characters. It just didn't really feel as special as it probably was supposed to feel. Episode 2, The Waters of Mars. The second special finds the Doctor arriving on Mars to help a human research station named Bowie Base 1, which I believe has to be a David Bowie reference. While here, the Doctor meets Adelaide Brooke and her crew, who the Doctor immediately recognizes as being vital to the future of human history, and tries to leave. However, because television, the Doctor is prevented from simply leaving and is forced to help Brooke and her crew deal with a strange alien parasite that is causing its host to begin expelling copious amounts of water from their bodies. 2 crew members have already been infected, with more to come if they aren't helped soon. After finding one of the infected crew, Maggie Kane, and running from the other infected crew member, Andy Stone, who infected another crew member, the Doctor and Captain Brooke realize that things are getting worse and that a retreat back to Earth might be necessary. However, the Doctor still wants to simply leave, but is still compelled to try and help. As we continue through the episode, more crew members get infected, and it's learned that the parasite wants to get to Earth because of the large amounts of water present on the planet's surface. The crew try to find out anything they can about the parasites, but are not able to get any real headway on it before more of the crew are either infected or the infected crew begin to destroy the base. The Doctor and Brooke talk, and we learn that Adelaide was a child when the events of the Stolen Earth and Journey's End took place, and after a Dalek decided not to kill her, wanted to go to space after it. The Doctor then tells her that her family will have a profound legacy on human history and their journey to the stars, and says that it's a consolation for her given the coming events. As more things begin to break down, the Doctor finally can leave, but can't help but return and try to change the fixed point in time. While most of the crew die in a massive explosion on the base, thus either trapping or killing the parasite known as the Flood, the Doctor saves Captain Brooke, Yuri Kerensky, and Mia Bennett, while also descending to a very dark place and begins to think of themselves as the Time Lord Victorious, and that the laws of time are theirs to be broken. The Doctor drops off the remaining crew on Earth, thinking that history has been changed for good, but hears Captain Brooke shoot herself with a blaster, thus setting the events of history straight once again. The Doctor Doctor realizes that they just got drunk on power, sees Uj Sigma, and realizes that their time truly is coming to an end. So the second special gives a lot of the same feelings as the first one for me, except now the side characters feel a little bit more important, even though they also kind of felt expendable, given the fact that they were all expendable for the most part, but they actually played more of a role. Like, they at least had more talking lines and actually felt more important this time. I didn't write down the names of the actors or actresses for pretty much any of them at all, sadly. I just didn't really feel as compelled to this time because there weren't really any major ones. But beyond that, they were important but still forgettable, which is the issue here. However, the actual antagonist, villain, alien, whatever you want to call it, of the Flood, very cool concept, very cool idea that I think they executed very well in this episode, and I can also understand why they haven't ever really brought this character, this villain parasite thing, back. It's a very difficult villain to come back into the show and to do another story with, given the fact that Waters of Mars is kind of the perfect story for this villain, where it's like, yeah, they're a parasite that infects you through water. Okay, you cannot ever do them on Earth then, like, ever. So you have to do them on a space base, you have to do something like that, and, like, we get no actual information about them, which is really cool. It reminds me a lot of the Midnight creature from the episode Midnight, where we don't know anything about that creature either, it's just here. And I do like the mini explanation of, like, oh, the ice warriors of Mars, which we see later on in a different series, and we had seen, like, way before in Classic Who, as well. It's like, oh, they must have found this parasite and locked it in a glacier to, you know, keep it from infecting their entire population. Like, that makes sense. Cool, little reference there. But beyond all that, the narrative idea of having an episode revolving around the Doctor having to deal with a fixed point in time and just simply wanting to leave, but not being able to because they're still compelled to help people, is a really good concept. I just don't necessarily think it was pulled off as well in this episode as it probably could have been or should have been, especially since, like, editing-wise, they kept flashing these, like, news articles about, like, reminding the audience, like, hey, fixed point in time, all these people supposed to die. It's like, we get it, we understand, you don't have to do it, like, once. You didn't have to do it like 3 more times in the episode. You did not have to do that. You don't have to do it once. It's fine. They didn't. They just kept doing it. It's like, okay, we get it. The Doctor is contemplating now. It's like, do I save these people? Oh no, they're supposed to die. What's going to happen? So, like, the idea of him dealing with a fixed point in time makes sense. But we've also seen that already in other episodes and done it better in other episodes. Like, even the Pompeii episode, Fire of Pompeii, was dealing with a fixed point in time and still finding a way to get around it. This one just felt more like the Doctor was trying too hard to work around it or to keep it settled when they could have done more, and it felt kind of weird. However, the acting in the episode was all phenomenal. Like, from everyone involved, all very, very phenomenal. And I do really love all the chemistry between all the characters, especially the Doctor and Adelaide Brooke. I thought the chemistry between those two characters was phenomenal, especially at the end, where even though I don't like what they did with the Doctor, where it became like the Time Lord victorious, and it's like, okay, this feels like a major jump for this character out of nothing, basically. That, like, while there had been some minor flashes of this in a couple of the seasons, I even mentioned them in a couple of the Reviewspectives as well, mainly back in the Rose season rather than anything else, where it's like, oh, Tennant's Doctor is a bit weird. Tennant's Doctor is getting a little like aggressive here, a little like sociopathical here. It's like that kind of faded out a while. So, like, bringing that back here as the Time Lord victorious kind of felt a little out of place given everything else. And I kind of like the whole idea that, like, it happened. The Doctor was like, I can change time to my will because I'm the last of the Time Lords. And then immediately having himself basically realize, oh, wait, shit, that's not how that works at all. Because Adelaide, you know, shoots herself to basically make the timeline right again. Is like, shit, I probably shouldn't have done that. It's like, yeah, you kind of got your comeuppance immediately. So it's like, okay, cool, we didn't prolong this at all. But just like Planet of the Dead, this one didn't really feel as special. It felt a little more special than the previous one, but it didn't really feel as special in a way. but it was still good. I still very much enjoyed this episode. I really love the tension and the horror of this episode, especially how in multiple scenes we saw like the background horror of the flood taking over a couple of the crewmates, and it really reminded me of how The Last of Us did it like a couple years ago when The Last of Us TV series came out, especially in that first episode where we had the parasite take over the old lady. It's like, oh no, we're seeing in the background, the people in the foreground aren't noticing this at all. It's like that's some great horror like cinematography there and some great directing, so I really did like that. So overall, I like the episode. I thought the episode was a really good, tense, dramatic, horror-filled episode with some really great acting. It just, again, didn't really feel as much like a special, and the changes to the Doctor, especially at the end, character-wise, felt really out of place given the rest of the episode, but still worked in a way, especially since they weren't, like, long-lived. But still, give the episode a 4 out of 5. Still, I love it. The flood's very cool. I wish they would bring the flood back at some point. But it is a great episode with a few scenes that just were a little bit off. But then a few other ones that were just great. Episode 2.5, Dreamland. This one technically counts, but I didn't watch it because it isn't available to watch officially online anywhere. So basically, the Doctor goes to Roswell, New Mexico, and helps defuse a years-long war between two alien species, all while set against the backdrop of the Cold War. The 6-part animated serial was released in the same time as the other specials, but due to being very strangely animated, badly voice-acted, and largely inconsequential to anything the overall story of the end of the 10th Doctor's run, it's been largely seen as inessential. So while I included Dreamland here just to simply bring it up, I have no actual thoughts on the episodes at all and wasn't able to actually watch it. I literally just want to bring it up because it's kind of a cool little piece of Doctor Who lore and also looks pretty bad too. Episode 3, End of Time, Part 1. We've reached the end of time, Part 1. Bad jokes aside, we have now reached the end of Tennant's run, and this two-parter is certainly something. Anyway, we start off with a foreboding voiceover telling of how everyone on Earth has had bad dreams on the day that the Earth ended, and then we find Wilf as he is dealing with these bad dreams of the Master. As Wilf consults a woman in a church, the Doctor visits the Ood sphere and seems to be blissfully goofy at the end of his song. The silliness ends quickly as the Doctor realizes that the Ood have been evolving far too fast and that a temporal distortion must be the cause. After speaking with the Ood elders, they all see a vision of a woman picking up the Master's ring after he was supposed to have died 2 finales ago. Anyway, the Doctor hurries back in time to stop the Master, but it is too late, and a cult has found a way to bring him back, and he is very hungry. A decent amount of plot happens, including a character named Joshua Naismith and his daughter being pleased with the Master returning, Wilf getting together with other older people to hunt for the Doctor, and the Master literally eating people in an absolutely disgusting manner. Like, really, they did not need to show him eating like this. It's disgusting. Anyway, the Doctor and the Master come face to face, but the Master escapes as Wilf and his crew interrupt. Wilf and the Doctor reconnect in a cafe, and the Doctor sees Donna in the distance, peacefully living her life as hoped. Some more voiceover happens, and then the Doctor and the Master meet in the junkyard once again, but now the Master has lightning powers for some reason. The Doctor and the Master share a moment of remembrance, but before the Master can escape once again, he is captured by Naismith's men. The Doctor then recruits Wilf to finish his adventure, since Wilf clearly must play a part in all of this. The two make it to the Naismith's mansion, where they learn of the Immortality Gate, that can heal all wounds and possibly grant immortality, as the name implies. 2 of Naismith's assistants turn out to be cactus aliens, and explain that the gate heals entire species across a planet using a genetic template, and with this, the Doctor finally realizes what's happening. At the gate, the Master breaks free of his binds and turns on the gate, and has had it modified to send his genetic makeup across the planet, thus turning every human into a clone of himself, except for Donna, because reasons. The Master then calls his creation the Master Race, because subtlety is not a Time Lord's strong suit. The episode comes to a close as we visit Gallifrey, and learn that the narrator was the Lord President of the Time Lords Rassilon, played by Timothy Dalton, and that because the Master's plan, the Time Lords now have the ability to return. So it's good to know that Russell T Davies still overdoes it with a finale, even for a special. Now, I will give him a little bit of a pass this time, because it is the end of his full era first era with the Doctor and with Doctor Who. I'll give it a little bit pass there, and also I'll give it a little bit more of a pass as well, given it is the end of David Tennant's actual run, given that David Tennant was kind of like the Doctor to bring so many people into the fandom and into the franchise. So, like, again, a little bit of a pass there. However, this episode was a lot of setup. It was a lot of setup for a bit of an underwhelming episode overall. Bringing back the Master, I can accept, especially since I like the idea of the Master, and I like John Sim as the Master, even if I don't necessarily like how he's been written. But having the Master turn everyone on Earth into a clone of himself and then call them the Master Race, really pushing it for me. I get the insinuation that they were going for there, but come on. It's way too on the nose what they're doing there. But the episode also feels a little too much like a setup for the second part, that it kind of loses what it's really going for in this specific episode as well. And it doesn't really feel like it has as much weight to it, and like not a lot of big scenes seem to happen, or they happen so fast. So like the Doctor and the Master meeting again doesn't feel like it has the weight to it like it should, given the fact that the last time we saw the Master, he died. So why does it not feel as important now? And also the first time we see the Master, he's literally eating people, and it's a disgusting scene, and they should never have shot it, but whatever. The Doctor also feels a little agitated that he ran into Wilf again, which is never a good thing. Like, why are you feeling agitated the fact you're running into one of your companions that actually, like, loves you so much? It's like, come on, man. What's going on there? Plus, it's Wilf. It's Wilf. You can't be mad at Wilf. It's Wilf. And then also, the complete throwaway side antagonist to Joshua Naismith and his daughter. It's just weird. Like, why have this character here when they're just a prop with no real bearing on the episode other than having the gate there for the big climactic finale in the mansion? Like, you could literally just put the gate anywhere else. You could have had it at Unit even, and you could have had Unit scientists like investigating it, because let's be honest, we know Unit's incompetent as it is. They can just be there. It's fine. You can have the Master infiltrate Unit. No one's gonna care. We've seen how incompetent Unit is, so it's fine. But like, having this whole other character that just doesn't do anything feels odd as well. But so much of this episode just feels like setup rather than an actual episode. And that's even more exemplified with the actual teases of the Time Lords, where it's like throughout the entire episode we're getting a voiceover from Rassilon and from the Time Lords talking about the episode, and it's like, you could have just had them teased at the end of the episode instead of at the entirety of the way through the episode, and I think it would have been more impactful when they came back. Like, if it wasn't set up all the time in the episode being like, hey, Tom was coming back, Tom was coming back, Tom was coming back, hey, they're back now. If we just had like the whole episode going like normal and having them all figure it out, and then being like, oh, the Time Lords are coming back, that would have been a much bigger reveal. But it's a Russell T Davies finale. It's a Russell T Davies part 1 of the finale, I should say. And the part 1s of the finales, for the most part in this entire run, have always felt like a lot more setup than the payoff was able to deliver. And it just felt a little too big for what it was going for, especially given what happened in the next episode. But it's fine. It's fine. It just felt a little bit like a slog to get through. So I'm giving it a 2 out of 5, which I know feels very low, but also just feels very mid of the road for me, which is about as good as I can go for it. Episode 4, End of Time, Part 2. Part 2 of The End of Time starts off with a lot of Time Lord BS, as Rassilon angrily sees the Master and the Doctor as the answers to ending the Time War, and through the use of time travel shenanigans, implants a message in the mind of the Master when he was a child. Because of course he does. They then sent a white point star diamond hurling towards Earth as a message, but also as a way to escape the time lock that was placed on them by the Doctor during the Time War. Meanwhile, on Earth, the Master has the Doctor and Wilf tied up and wants the TARDIS to go back in time to find out what the drumming in his head is. Donna calls Wilf in distress, obviously, and the Master sends his clone goons after her, only for them to be knocked out with a blast as her memories begin to come back. The Doctor says this is a defense mechanism, and after the Master explains his plan, is knocked out by one of the cactus aliens from earlier, and the Doctor, Wilf, and the aliens escape to an orbiting ship. The Doctor destroys the ship's systems, so they are now stuck in orbit as the Master finally figures out that the drumming is coming from Gallifrey. The Master finds the diamond that was sent by Rassilon and begins formulating a plan. Meanwhile, the Doctor and Wilf discuss who the Time Lords really are, and then fly the ship straight back to Earth to confront the Master. Some action happens, as expected for the finale, and the Doctor jumps from the ship and crashes into the mansion to see that they're too late, and the Master has already brought the Time Lords back. The Master believes that he's bested the Time Lords, but Rassilon completely erases the entirety of the Master's plan, thus leaving him in the same position that the Doctor is in. Rassilon then begins the process of bringing back Gallifrey as it begins to materialize in Earth's orbit. Rassilon then explains how they plan to ascend beyond the need for bodies as the entirety of creation is ripped apart. Because of course. The Doctor takes out Wilf's gun and prepares to shoot either Rassilon or the Master, but eventually shoots the diamond and sends the Time Lords and Gallifrey back into their time lock. However, Rassilon tries to pull them along with him, but is stopped by the Master. While the day is saved, the Doctor hears 4 knocks and realizes that Wilf is still trapped in the nuclear booth and realizes what must be done. The Doctor lets out their rage in a well-deserved vent session before freeing Wilf and taking his spot in the booth. The Doctor takes in all of the radiation and is instantly healed as the regeneration process has started. The Doctor takes Wilf home and then travels to various points in time to distantly say goodbye to various people that were part of the journey, including Martha, Luke and Sarah Jane Smith, Captain Jack and Alonzo Frame, and the great-granddaughter of Joan Redfern, Variety Newman. The Doctor also gives Wilf and Sylvie a present for Donna's wedding of a winning lottery ticket purchased with £1 given by Sylvie's late husband. Finally, the Doctor travels back to New Year's Day of 2005 and sees Rose and Jackie as they head home. The Doctor shares a brief conversation with Rose, who doesn't know who the Doctor is given that it is too early in her timeline, before saying goodbye. The Doctor then goes into the TARDIS and flies off as the regeneration fully takes hold, blasting energy throughout the TARDIS as the TARDIS erupts into flames. The Doctor stands up as we get our first look at Matt Smith as the 11th Doctor. So in a very similar vein to the first part, I felt that the second part of End of Time also dropped the ball throughout it up until the very end of the episode, where we got the actual goodbye of David Tennant's 10th Doctor. So the grand return of the Time Lords felt pretty cool up until they didn't actually do anything other than reversing the entirety of everything that happened in the previous episode, which I hate that when that happens in any show, where it's like, oh man, we do a bunch of world-changing stuff in this episode, never mind, none of it matters. And it's like, why even do it then? Why even have it in the first episode then, if it doesn't matter in the second episode at all? Because literally Rassilon comes in and is like, haha, and Thanos snap, everything's back to normal. So it's like, sure, cool guys, cool. But the big return of Gallifrey, awesome, that's really cool. Except we didn't get to really see Gallifrey at all, other than just the big CG planet is there, not really affecting Earth at all, and it's gone. Yay. So it's like, that happened a bunch of this episode. There was like a lot of really big action scenes as well, especially with the Doctor flying the ship and then jumping out of it to crash into the mansion. That's a very Russell T Davies finale thing. It also felt really unnecessary and very weird, like most things in this episode. It was wild. But like, it felt stupid. It felt kind of stupid too, but whatever. But Timothy Dalton coming in as Rassilon, though, with the Time Lords, really cool. I did like that. I did like the idea of Rassilon and the idea of Timothy Dalton as Rassilon and his voice as this character and like his like authority with this character. It felt cool. I did like that. Even if Rassilon didn't do much, like, at all. Like, this character is this really imposing idea of a character because he's like the president of the Time Lords. Like, oh, the Time Lords are back. We've been hearing about them this whole time, and he's like the head of them. Okay, he's here for like maybe 3 minutes. Okay, he's gone. So it's like, I wish they had done something more with him, especially given that it is Timothy Dalton. Like, you know, wish they would have done something with him at all, but whatever. However, the main issue I had with this episode is the amount of actual exciting stuff that happened in the episode didn't really justify the length of the episode either. Like, this episode, I believe, is like an hour and a half long. It's a supersized episode because it is, again, the finale of David Tennant's run. It's the finale of the Davies era of Doctor Who. So, like, I understand them having an extra long episode, but as you heard in the summary, while I did kind of point out a few too many scenes, not a lot really happens in between the in between the big scenes. Like, there's nothing really going on. Like, there's a lot going on, but nothing really going on, if that makes any sense at all. It makes sense in my head how I'm saying it. But, like, there's a lot of exciting stuff, but not really a lot going on. Somehow the extended length, not a lot felt like it happened. However, the biggest saving grace for the finale, the biggest saving grace, is the ending. That ending is beautiful, even though some of the things I didn't necessarily like, namely Martha. Again, I don't know what they're doing with Martha, but I'll get onto that. Everything else, though, felt great, where it's like, okay, the Doctor's regenerating. We know he's regenerating. This is a big deal for the show. This is a big deal for the fandom because everyone loved David Tennant. And it's like, this is a big deal with him regenerating. So he's actually going back, visiting all of his former companions, all the people that we know and love from this whole series. It's kind of interesting, the people that they chose. Like, I understand the main people they chose, obviously, like Martha, Mickey, if you want to count him, Captain Jack. Alonzo was cool to see because that brings us back to the Titanic episodes. Like, that was cool. But then also, like, the great-granddaughter of Joan Redfern from the Human Nature episode. Okay, I understand why we're seeing her, but, like, we didn't have to. We didn't have to see her at all. And then, like, not seeing a few other characters that, like, kind of were important as well. It felt a little weird. It just felt like a little weird. Like, we didn't see any of the cat people from new times 17 York, which I think would have been cool to see, like, at least one of the cat people, like the main sister, whatever. I think would have been cool to see her. To see anyone from the space base that became the Dalek base and then became back a space base, I think, again, would have been cool to see them. It just would have been cool to see, like, some of the other random characters that we kind of knew and loved throughout the series, and then ending off obviously with the biggest one that actually did feel really impactful when I watched it again. It actually did feel really good. Was his goodbye to Rose. And I remembered it when I watched it the first time growing up. That I was like, okay, this makes sense. And, like, I didn't really care as much because I didn't really like Rose as much back then. But now, having gone back and re-experienced Rose's seasons, I was really touched. I was actually really touched by this goodbye because it felt like a nice, simple goodbye where there was a lot more emotion behind it. This time watching it was like, yeah, this is really big. This is really important. And it just felt cool to actually see Rose again, with her not being like the center of the universe type of thing. And again, that's nothing on Billie Piper. There's nothing on her. It's on the writing and how they kind of made her a little bit more like the center of the universe than they probably should have been. But whatever. But just seeing her as just like Rose, this simple, normal girl who is about to have the adventure of her lifetime, like, beyond a doubt, and her entire life's about to change, and just, you know, saying, hey, hope you have a happy new year, it's gonna be a good one, is kind of really touching and just, like, really nice and small for the scope of this show. But I really enjoyed that a lot. But beyond all that, the actual fully end of the episode, we actually get the regeneration into Matt Smith, also I thought was great as well. Just having the Doctor say goodbye to everyone silently knowing what's going on, then him going back into the TARDIS, and then just boom, exploding, and then be like, okay, I'm Matt Smith, I'm not Ginger, everything's blowing up around me, what do I do now? And then leading into the next season, I thought was a great way to end off the Davies era, and I thought was a great way to end off the David Tennant era as well, leading into the Matt Smith era. I thought that was really spectacular how they did that. But overall the episode, I thought RTD went way over the top, as he does with finales, and I thought kind of lost the point a bit in the finale, but that ending really saved a lot of it for me. And I gave it a 3 out of 5, mainly because of that ending and a few things that happened in the episode as well. So, in conclusion, the Russell T Davies era of Doctor Who was a lot of things. It had a lot of really big ups, and it had some definitely major downs, especially for me, since I'm a very different fan than most people who watch this series. But I can't help but just commemorate it in a lot of ways, and thank the Russell T Davies era and Russell T Davies in general for bringing back Doctor Who as a whole. Because, like, without Doctor Who, I don't exactly know how my love of certain fandoms would be now, given that I literally grew up with this show, and it was such a big part of my life growing up, and such a big part of so many things in my life, and just rating the specials here as well. The specials were some definite ups and definite downs, which I kind of feel like it's a good encapsulation of the entirety of the Russell T Davies era, where sometimes you had major ups in episodes like The Girl in the Fireplace, Blink, or the two-parter of Silence in the Library and Force of the Dead. But then you also have some major downs like Fear Her, Love and Monsters, and The Lazarus Experiment. So it's like, that kind of feels right, where it's like, hey, you got some really good episodes like Planet of the Dead, Waters of Mars. Then you got the finale, which is like, okay, got a pretty big gap there between the two of those, for me at least. So like, but it makes sense though. It makes sense. A lot of it's really big and over the top for the finale, but some of it's just really good character-driven stuff, and it just makes a lot of sense. However, the specials do range from really solid to okay, but I do think overall all of them were telling a bit smaller of stories that didn't need the extended run times that they had, especially the finales. The finales didn't need as much of the runtime as they had in general, since they didn't do much with it. And the other specials beforehand, Planet of the Dead, Waters of Mars, I think could have just been a little bit shorter and it would have been fine. I don't think it would have ruined anything at all. However, I do think that David Tennant was hitting on all cylinders for these specials, given that it was his end of his run. So I think he definitely had nailed his take on the Doctor at this point, and I think Davies and the writers and all the direction and everything kind of also knew what they wanted to do with the 10th Doctor at this point as well, which is good. They finally figured it out by the end, and I feel like this was the same Doctor from the Donna season as well that had just happened beforehand, so I think they finally figured out what they want to do with David Tennant at that point, given how his Doctor was. I still think, as a finale, I think Journey's End is still a better finale overall, and I think that one acts as a better wrap-up to the Russell T Davies era as opposed to the End of Time Part 2, but, you know, I digress with that. So when averaging the scores together, the specials, not counting Dreamland, gets a 3.25 out of 5, which is pretty much as middle-of-the-road average as you can get for it, which I think is personally fine. So then, beyond an actual rating for this and for everything here, I just kind of wanted to take a little moment just to talk about Doctor Who as well, and the whole point of this Reviewspective whole thing while we're at the end of the Davies era now. So, while my personal feelings might differ from some of the general consensus of some of these episodes, I will say, still don't like Midnight or any of the finales except for Parting of Ways, Journey's End. I can still recognize that this era of Doctor Who meant a lot to a lot of people, and by all accounts, I think was a rousing success for the return of the franchise as a whole. But beyond that, the RTD era brought back the show in the public eye, and it just, like, restarted the entire franchise that has now lasted over 60 years by the time of this recording. The 60th anniversary was literally last year at the time of this recording. That's pretty major. That's a big deal. This franchise lasted for that long. So just to end off, I want to get a little personal about it as well, and why I even did this whole project. And basically the whole project started off with this idea of watching the latest season, or getting really excited for the latest season, and just kind of thinking back to Doctor Who and being like, I remember watching this show growing up, and I really love the idea of this show, and I really love everything around the show. I really love the Doctor, I really love the cinematography, the iconography, the symbolism and everything. I mean, hell, the Magic the Gathering set also is kind of what got me back into wanting to do this. And it got me thinking of this, like, nostalgic feeling of this show and of my childhood watching it, and how I wanted to go back and re-experience that and just see from a new, older eye if I still like this show, if I still actually did like this franchise, or if it was just more like rose-tinted glasses looking back on it. And I am happy to say that even though I was kind of fairly mixed on David Tennant as a Doctor, there's a lot of things in this that I really enjoyed. Donna was one of the best companions, I think, of the entire run. Eccleston as the Ninth Doctor surprised the hell out of me, and he deserves so much more from this franchise than what was given to him. Rose is a very competent, very smart, very well done companion in Eccleston's season, and for most of Tennant's first season, even if I don't necessarily like the romance angle they went with that, I still think Billie Piper did a phenomenal job with the character. Martha deserves way better than she got. Just in general, she deserves way more. And David Tennant as the Doctor, I thought was fairly mixed as the Doctor, going back and looking at it. But I can fully understand why so many people love him so much, and why they brought him back and why they brought Donna back for the 60th anniversary specials, because that relationship was just so good. And it got me to really ask the question again, do I like this franchise? Like, did this Reviewspective, did this rewatch reignite my love for the franchise, or was it always there? And the thing I kept thinking, and the answer to that question is yes. I do love Doctor Who. I do still very much love this franchise. I very much love this series, even the ups and the downs for it. And I think that's the best thing to say about it, is like, even being critical about it means that you love it in some way. And even though I'm critical about certain episodes, I still love them in their own way. That's why I want to be critical about them. That's why I want to talk about them. That's why I'm doing this video. So to answer the question of do I actually like Doctor Who, the answer is yes, I do in fact like Doctor Who. I am going to keep doing these videos. They're just going to come out in sporadic time as I figure out my life, basically. But to wrap it up as well, the RTD era means a lot to a lot of people, and as I've come to find out, it meant a lot to me. And it reminded me a lot of growing up, sitting on the couch every week, waiting for new episodes to come on so I can watch with my parents and my sister, and then just getting really excited about that. It reminded me of accidentally spoiling major plot points to my sister when we were picking her up from college and being like, oh shit, I spoiled something and I didn't realize it. It reminds me of so many of the important things in my life that I had almost kind of forgotten about, and I don't know what my view of fandom would be without Doctor Who in it. So, as a big finale, I just want to say thank you to Doctor Who, and thank you to Russell T Davies for bringing this back, and I'll be back again for the next season with Matt Smith. And if you want to watch more from the channel, there's the entire playlist of Doctor Who things. You can watch that right over here as well. You can watch that right here for the rest of the playlist for the Doctor Who specials, Doctor Who reactions, reviews, everything like that. And over here as well is going to be a video that YouTube recommends for you as well. And I will be back again for the Matt Smith season and for other videos, but just give me some time with that. And I hope you all enjoyed the video, and if you did, like, subscribe, comment as well. And just let me know down in the comments below fully if you are a Doctor Who fan, and what you thought about these videos, and what you thought about the Russell T Davies era of Doctor Who. And until next time, I will see you later. So until then, peace everyone. Peace.